I started both my UI and backend applications. Inside my UI application, if I click on these buttons, though the path is going to change, but we're not going to see any new component or new page inside our application. At the same time, you'll also see the entire page is getting refreshed. If I click on this contact, you'll be able to see this refresh icon is going to refresh. The same applies for about, home, or any other links that we have as of now inside our application. So we need to enhance our application further by implementing routing related changes. React core library does not support any routing related functionality. There is a separate library that is developed by the open source community with the name React Router. This is the official website of the React Router. You can always come to this website and explore the documentation of React Router. I'm going to put my best efforts to explain you about all the important concepts of React Router. But in case if you have any questions in future, this is the place where you can explore further. To use React Router inside our application, first we need to make sure we are installing the React Router related packages. Let me go to the terminal and stop my running UI application. Here I'm going to run a command npm I. I is the shortcut for install. If you don't like the shortcut, you can type anti-spelling install as well. Now I need to mention the package name or the library name, which is React-Router-DOM. Since we are trying to implement React Router inside a web application where it is going to use the browser, we need to make sure we are installing this. So DOM is going to present only inside the browsers. So this package is specific to the web applications. In case if you want to leverage React Router inside mobile applications, the package is going to differ. You can always find more details inside the official documentation. Let me execute this command, which is going to take care of installing the package. Once the installation is completed, as a very first step, I need to define the routing related mapping inside my application. When I say mapping, I need to tell to this React Router library if so-and-so end user is coming to so-and-so path, which component should be rendered onto the web page. So that kind of mapping information I need to give as a developer. We can't expect React Router to know all this information out of the box because these are business requirements and they are going to change from application to application. Since we build the React UI application with the help of Vite build tool, in this kind of projects, you need to open the main.jsx. So this is the ideal place to define all our React routing related mappings. So let me import a function with the name create browser router, which is from the library React Router DOM. So using this function, I can define my routing mappings. Let me invoke this function, and this function, it is going to accept an array of routing details. So as you can see here, it is going to accept an array of route objects. Inside this array, first I'm going to define the very first routing definition or routing mapping. So let me mention curly brace. So this will be the very first element inside the array. So first we need to type path. To this path, I'm going to mention /, which means if any end user is trying to access only localhost 5173, then I want this path to be activated. After mentioning the path, we need to mention element. To this element, we need to mention which component we want to render onto the UI application. When someone is trying to access this path, we want app component to render onto the UI. That's why I'm trying to mention app component details here. Followed by, we can define other routing related mappings or definitions as well. But before that, I need to make sure I have a component for each of the page that I want to display. I'm going to create some empty components or dummy components for now. Later on, we're going to enhance them by writing some JSX code. As of now, inside our application, we're trying to display different components or different pages when an end user is trying to click on these about, contact, login, and cart. For each of these pages, I need to build a component that I want to display. So let me first create a new file with the name about.jsx. Inside this, first I'm going to simply create a functional component. So this is going to simply return a div element with the content above. In the similar lines, I'm also going to create contact.jsx Inside this also, I'm going to create a functional component. And after contact, I'm going to create login.jsx. Here also, let me use the shortcut RFC, which is going to create a functional component with the name login. After the login, I'm going to create a new component with the name cart. Inside this file, let me create a functional component. I have 4 different components which I want to display based upon the route that end user is trying to navigate. Let me go to my main.jsx. Here, I'm going to copy this path multiple times because my create browser router can accept any number of elements inside this array. For the second path, I will just mention home. And if someone is trying to access the home path, I want to display the same app component. Let me copy few more path details, followed by I'm going to update them. So after the home, this time I'm going to mention about. When someone is trying to access this about, I want to display about component. After the about component, I will try to mention the path here as contact. And for the contact route path, I want to display contact component. After the contact, the path I'm going to mention is login. For the login path, we are going to display login component. Let me update the same for last path with the path name as cart. And for this cart path, we are going to display the cart component. So we have provided all our routing related configurations or definitions to this create browser router function. So the output from this function, I'm going to catch with the variable name as constant app router. The constant name can be anything. Once we have these routing related definitions available inside a constant, we need to pass these details as an input to another component. Let me go towards the end of this file. Here, if you can see, we are trying to render some content under the root element. So this is the place we are trying to actually load the app component. But right now, instead of always loading the app component, we want to load different components based upon the path that my end user is trying to navigate. That's why here we should get rid of this app component, and instead we need to invoke a component with the name router provider. So this router provider is available inside the React Router DOM package only. To this router provider, we can pass all our routing related definitions by invoking router. And to this router, I'm trying to pass the variable name or constant name, which is app router. And towards the end, let me close this component. This is the bare minimum setup that we need to perform inside any React application to implement routing. So first, what we have done, we have defined all our routing mappings with the help of this create browser router function. Followed by this entire information, we are trying to feed to a component with the name router provider. We need to make sure to mention these components in the place where you're trying to render your entire application content into the root element. With these changes, this router provider, it is going to act as a brain for your application. So based upon the routing related information that we feed to the router provider, accordingly, it is going to display the corresponding component. Previously, we are always displaying the app component, but right now we have given the responsibility of rendering a component based upon the path to this router provider. Let me save these changes, followed by I will try to start my UI application by running the command npm run dev. Inside the browser, if I try to access a path home, you'll be able to see I'm able to access the same app component. But now if I click on this about, you'll see the content about is being displayed here. But this is a problem, right? Because we're not displaying the header and footer. The React router, it is only displaying my about component by ignoring the header and footer. Let's try the same for other links as well. Even if I click on this contact, it is displaying me only the contact without header and footer. The same applies for login. If I test the same for cart, for the cart also the same is happening. We have a very big problem here. Though we implemented routing mechanism inside our application, it's not proper because we want to display this header and footer for each and every page because those components are common for all the pages. And in fact, with the help of this header, my end user can jump onto the different pages. If I don't show this header it will be a very big problem for my end user. But the other paths like home path, and if I go to the normal localhost 5173, the page is working perfectly, because if you go to the app.jsx file, inside the app.jsx, we are trying to render 3 different components: header, home, and footer. We can try to do very similar thing inside the about.jsx as well. Maybe what I can do is I can try to copy this and paste it here. So let me remove this entire content and mention React fragment. Inside these React fragments, I'm going to mention the 3 components that I have copied. Here, we don't want to return home. Instead, we want to return some div element with the content as about. Let me import the header component followed by footer component. Now, if I save these changes and go to the browser, this time if I click on this about, it's working fine. Like if I switch to this light mode, you'll be able to see there is a header. It is also displaying the div element content, which is about. Right now, the styling is not proper and we have some minimum information. That's why we are able to see this bare minimum content from the about component. After this about text, we also have footer. So this solution is giving a direction to me on how I can show header and footer for each and every path. But do you think this is a feasible option? I end up duplicating this header and footer in all the components. In real applications, we may have 100 components or even 1,000 components as well. Mentioning these header and footer in all those 1,000 components is not going to be a feasible option. There has to be a better option. Let's try to explore the same in the next lecture.